asked to and invited to participate in the Decolonizing street art event 2015. So with that, I chose to do street performance art. It was really important for me to be able to do a project that was also going to it was about the time and dedication that I was able to commit, and so I thought street performance art was suiting. It took a lot of courage, and I had to really figure out what it is that I wanted to do and how I was going to do it. And so I definitely used an indigenous perspective, an indigenous worldview in how I approached performance art. And so my goal and intention of my performance was to go out into the city of Montreal dressed in Iroquois regalia that was lent to me by my cousin Gahandillo. I also brought with me a braid of sweetgrass and an eagle feather, which are also First Nations medicines that we use for smudging and prayer, spiritual cleansing and such. And
I created this mural with a bunch of people from around the city. It actually came out of a little bit of struggle because I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I haven't done anything on this sort of size canvas before. Usually I'm creating art by myself in private and then and certainly not creating it in front of people. I haven't really had people witness the process. I usually share finished products, so it was a little bit challenging, sort of trying to figure out or trying to build the courage to do that, I guess. And it made me feel a lot better once I got people to participate and help me out. So we were lucky enough to be able to run a workshop. Me and Lindsay Delaronde, who's from here, and her and I are friends from Victoria. We ran a collage workshop. And so this mural includes collages that people who came to the workshop made. And basically we gave them pretty straightforward prompt, I guess. We wanted them to address that we are on Mohawk territory here. But then also when we look around, especially in the city, sort of 500 years of colonialism has changed this landscape drastically. And you can't see that this is Mohawk land, and that Mohawk people are here, and that they have used this place to express their life ways since the beginning of time. But now we're basically surrounded by buildings. So we wanted them to find images in magazines and different things that we had available to them that help us sort of confront that, and then also create conversation so that we can start countering the erasure that's taking place here.
what I did was I went out in the city of Montreal dressed in regalia, as well as with the cedar, with the sweetgrass and my eagle feather, and I approached people walking in Montreal, and I approached him by saying, which translates to welcome. My name is Katsitsakatste.
So it's really neat because there's a lot of different stories up there from a lot of different people's perspectives, and sort of highlights the power of collage to allow us to bring together lots of incrementable and different pieces and put them in conversation together and make connections where perhaps there haven't been connections before, or there's only been a desire for connections, but we haven't had the tools to bring those things together. Collage allows us to do that.
I educated people about the closest reserve to Montreal, which is Kahnawake. I educated people about the existence that our presence has been here, for many generations. And then also I even got into some discussion around the impacts of colonization, residential schools, and so this introduction and interaction really opened the doorway to have an exchange of knowledge, just not on my end, but also from the receiver as well. And so even in terms of the lack of knowledge that people didn't know what First Nations territory they were on, they were still really grateful and thankful that we had that exchange of knowledge. And I know through body language and just observing them that, they were like, I never knew that. The
image, the painting that I did comes from a photograph of one of my aunties. She's at our fishing village, and she's actually holding up a huge salmon that she caught. There's no salmon here, so I decided to change the fish to a trout. And she also doesn't have a face because what I've learned sort of growing up away from my homelands and growing up in an urban center is that cities have this way of bringing a lot of different people together. But a lot of Native people have lots of shared experiences, and she's faceless so that people can, I think, relate to her a little bit more, maybe see themselves in her or see their own relations in her. Yeah, so it keeps it a little bit more open, inclusive.
As an individual, it's really important that I acknowledge, that I carry my community with me. And so I found that it was a very peaceful interaction. And it was a little bit upsetting in some aspects that a lot of people didn't know. There was not very much knowledge, only some responses such as, yeah, I've learned about Iroquois people in school in social studies. And so that too is breaking down barriers or very historic old anthropological views of Native people, and then contrast to that, having a real Iroquois person interact with that, I found really helped bridge that preconceived notion and knowledge of what Native people are, and then experiencing a human interaction with a Native person as well.
One of the things I've learned through growing up away from my home community, growing up in an urban place, and sort of getting understanding Indigenous history and how colonialism has fractured our identities, fractured our families, fractured our communities and our nations, and that we're left with these pieces that we're trying to sort of put back together.
There is people that are trying to generate those relationships to Kahnawake, to the local people, and to the 26,000 Aboriginal people who live in Montreal. And so something that I would like to really see is people making those spaces and taking a responsibility and accountability as visitors on a territory that doesn't belong to them, but also providing that space for more Aboriginal art, more Aboriginal music, just culture in general, and how cross-culturally we can learn from each other.
Prior to the existence of Canada and settlers being here, we were using the land and the flow of the land and how we move around the land and our relationship with the land to govern ourselves, to organize ourselves, to help us make decisions, and then to turn around in the Yukon, I guess, like 200 years later, and use colonial forms to do that. Doesn't sit well, I think, with a lot of people, and we're trying to figure out how to do something different.
If people from Kahnawake knew that there was more opportunities to show their work or develop relationships where they can bridge even international, like the potential is there, but it's about really creating those relationships. That was what the two-row wampum was established, when my ancestors, the Iroquois people, established the two-row wampum. It was about the two canoes traveling in the river side by side, never any canoe touching another. And so we have to always remember, we have to go back to the old ways, because the people a long time ago, they understood that we were going to be living side by side and we would coexist together. But what does that look like today? And so I feel like the Decolonizing Street Art event is a good opportunity to really start that discussion of how we can collaborate with non-Indigenous people, allies, and mixed ancestry, and even minorities that move here who also have very similar narratives of displacement and not feeling like they have space.